Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, taking the embargo on the M64 review has been lifted. I've had this unit for about 2 weeks now, testing everything in the background from the hardware to the controllers to the games that they just recently re-released to actual N64 games and flash cartridges. I'm going to be going over all of the different hardware you can pick up as well as the performance. And it's going to be a very long video because I put a lot of thought into this and actually asked a few people what tests they would want to see, people I do trust, because sometimes people think of things that never actually pop into my head. So if all you want to see is how well this performs as an N64 FPGA console, go ahead and click on the time code I just popped up on screen because I am making this in parts and we'll get right to that testing. But otherwise we're going to do an entire unboxing. Of course this is different box because it is the PR review unit, but I'll go over all of the hardware, its design, aesthetic, how it functions, and basically lead you into the testing of actual N64 games. And before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. And like every single review on this channel, I am under no pre-existing conditions to say anything whatsoever about the hardware and the software other than what I find. So all of my thoughts and opinions are my own. They are not colored by anybody asking me to say anything. So getting into the actual package here, it came with 2 Hyperkin controllers as well as the M64 console and a copy of Super Smash Bros., which I was not expecting whatsoever. And I will say the Hyperkin controllers, they are a nice pair for the M64, but it's going to be their own controller, which we'll get into in a few moments, that really stole the show as far as being the option I would choose when it came to playing the M64 in and of itself. So as far as the aesthetic is concerned, it's definitely going to be a love it or hate it thing. It's doing the exact opposite of what the Analogue 3D is. Some people absolutely love this aesthetic, kind of feels like a candy apple to me. Other people are not a fan whatsoever, so that's going to be subjective. But at the end of the day, looks are kind of secondary to the function. So again, we'll get into that in maybe 10 minutes or so. But I will say, as far as the power button and the scroll wheel are concerned, they definitely feel nice and tactile, and you're able to run the entirety of the OS without actually having to grab a controller if you don't want to. But the nice thing is there is going to be a key button combo to get you into the M64 on-screen display, so honestly, outside of the power button, you don't really need to interact with these all that much. And I will say it is a nice small footprint, and the cartridges slot in nicely. It has a good connector in there, and honestly the eject button, you can probably launch a cartridge to the moon if you so want to hit it hard enough, which is exactly what I decided to do, see if I could hit it and catch it in midair before it actually hit the M64 again, and I was able to do so. Do not ask me why I enjoy doing that, it's just always a thing. I like to see if that's actually possible, and it is. Now around the front, of course, it wouldn't be an N64 design if it didn't have 4 controller ports, and those are of course going to be there. And whether you're using original N64 controllers, the Hyperkin, or the ModRetro controller in and of itself, they are a nice fit, they aren't too tight, aren't too loose, basically exactly what you'd want out of a controller port. And around the back, you're going to have USB-C power in, and it does come with a wall wart. You're going to have HDMI as well as 2 USB-C ports and an SD card slot. At this point in time, it maybe never, you're going to be loading up games from that SD card. We'll have to wait and see. And if you want to know whether or not this thing actually works with flash cartridges, I'll tell you right now, we'll get it out of the way. My EverDrive X5 worked perfectly fine. I've loaded up games and had no issues, and that should be what you experience as well when you actually get these things shipped in. And for those of you that do care, around the bottom, you get a logo, you get good air venting, and you get these 4 rubber circles. So if this thing was actually knocked off a table, you Incredible Hulk the ever-loving hell out of it to actually do it. Whether you love the design or whether you hate the design, it is effective, it is unique, and it's completely different than Analogue 3D. So as far as the physical object is concerned, 10 out of 10, no complaints, maybe 7.5 out of 10 for the overall styling. And as far as just plugging this thing in, I know it matters to a lot of people because you like to see all of the unboxing. You do get a box inside at least the PR unit that is going to have the wall wart. It's going to have a nice quality USB-C cable with basically almost a braiding around the edge, and mine at least came with different international plugs, and I would assume that is what all of the different retail units are going to come with as well. Now, I will say the Hyperkin controller does a very good job of being a recreation of the N64 controller. You have the analog stick, of course it is gated, and of course it does not have a tiny little post because those things were always a disaster back in the N64 days. This is going to get the job done if you just want a new modern N64 controller that doesn't have a ton of wear and tear on it. I tested this, I tested ModRetro's controller as well as original N64 controllers. Everything worked perfectly fine, all of the analog calibrations felt good to me, and as much as an N64 controller can ever be comfortable in the hand, and honestly I have a 50-50 love it or hate it with these, it did work. But honestly, and I know it isn't expensive but worth it price, the 100% star of the show has got to be ModRetro's new controller. This thing, and I am telling you right now, I firmly believe this, is a masterclass in industrial and ergonomic design. It is absolutely perfect feeling in the hand. The analog stick feels incredible. All the buttons are responsive. Nothing is mushy whatsoever. This is, hands down, bar none, by far, the best N64 controller I have ever used to play N64 games. And it also works on my Windows PC, so if I'm going to do something like N64 emulation, it is a great option as well, because this thing isn't just for the actual ModRetro M64, but I went into this thinking to myself, I knew that the feedback apparently was going to be good on this, but it couldn't really live up to the hype of being the new perfect go-to de facto N64 controller, and outside of the fact that there is a sad face on the back, that should be a smile, because straight up this thing is the only N64 controller I am ever going to use again in the future. If it broke, I would instantaneously replace it. It really is just that good, and it definitely is worth the high asking price they are asking for it, but it does have a lot going for it. And you'll see here you have a USB-C port, so you can charge the actual battery, and you can also connect it hardwired into the M64, and the battery recharge here basically slots in and out like a magazine, and I'm sure I shouldn't have said that because the comment section is definitely going to go wild with that one, and the maker of the ModRetro M64, and yes, I know who made it. I am here to review and give you guys information. What you do with that is totally up to you, but I'm not trying to pretend I don't know. It just kind of organically came up in that moment in time because it did make sense. And as far as the hand feel is concerned, the ergonomics, the overall control aspect, there is nothing I would say about this controller that I would change whatsoever. And the nice thing is, on the on-screen display, you do get to see what controllers are actually input. You can compare it over Bluetooth, and of course you can hardwire it in. And the nice thing is, once I actually had the battery fully charged, I got through the entire testing phase of capturing all the footage you're going to see later on in this video, and I still have like 50% controller charge left. So I don't know exactly what the stated battery life is. Usually that is very optimistic, and you're not going to hit that. But as far as my experience, I don't think you're going to be able to plug this thing in all that often, and that definitely is a win. And just taking some more time to talk about this controller, because again, the takeaway on this for me was sheer perfection. It just really does feel good. The gated stick here, it has a nice slot in. It's not going to get hitched up. It's not going to move across it too smoothly. It has a very organic N64 feel, and honestly, that's something that we've needed for a long time. The only thing that I could think might be a downside to some of you is this thing is actually relatively heavy. It weighs in at 319 grams, and it feels extremely strong and competent and very well made in the hand. And if we move that over to Freedom Units, not the empirical gram measurement, I actually recalibrate my scale here, you're going to see that that is over a pound of controller. Now, I don't think that's really going to be that big of a deal in the long run, but for some people, maybe that'll feel ever so slightly heavy. But trust me, in your hand, it feels like a premium product. And if we put the Hyperkin controller over, basically very similar to the weight of an N64 controller, you're going to see that's going to clock in at 257 grams. Additionally, in the box, I got a copy of Buck Bumble, which is being reproduced by ModRetro, and I know a lot of people love Buck Bumble, and I like it for the overall intro theme song and what it can be, but it's definitely not one of those my favorite N64 games of all time. But the nice thing is about the M64 is it isn't just a console, it isn't just a controller, it isn't just something you're going to pop in and EverDrive to unless you want to. It's also going to be getting new games published for it. From what I've heard and seen online, it isn't just reprints of old N64 games. You may very well see some new games that never released in the N64 library coming over to the ModRetro M64, and those will definitely still work on regular N64 consoles as well, I believe. So it really is nice to think that in the future we might be getting a lot of fun new games on N64 reproduced by ModRetro. And as far as the shell and feel are concerned, obviously it's different than a retail N64 shell because it is brand new and something that we never see anymore in new games, at least new retail games from main manufacturers like Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, is you get a full manual with full artwork and full color in there as well. Kind of almost feels a little bit like a Game Boy Advance manual, not an N64 size, but from start to finish, just like the controller and all the other packaging, it is a very premium feel, and I think a lot of people are going to enjoy putting these things on their shelves because it's not like we get that many new N64 games right now, so it's definitely going to be a benefit. And of course I'm going to compare it, at least overall, to the size right now of the Analogue 3D before I actually get into the N64 testing. This is not going to be an Analogue 3D versus ModRetro M64 video. That might come in the future if you guys want to see it. And if I don't do any tests in this video that you do want to know about, this might be a part 2. because it's one of those things. This is still getting updated as I do this review, and the software you get when you actually get it out of the box may be different than what I experienced. So I may actually update this review in the future if new software goes up, because just like Analogue 3D, you know full well the thing that you get in the box when you open it day one is not going to be the experience you get at year one. But when you turn it on, I will say the operating system, the UI, everything else, it's very self-explanatory. It has a really nice look to it, and it has a lot of fun color as well. And between the logo as well as some of the controller diagrams, 2 of the 3 colors I use for the video game Esoterico logo are represented here. So you know I'm a sucker for those colors, and honestly, I like a nice poppy UI. So if we go in here, not going to show you gameplay yet, but you do have an entire display section with different profiles, and each and every single one of them is fully customizable, and you can even make your own profiles. The robust suite of different scan lines, different PVM filters, the ability to change the gamma around, sharpen up the image, and basically do everything we had on the Mr. side of things, because of course, the same FPGA developer, FPGA Zoom Spots, made this. You're going to see that come across, and honestly, that is really nice. It's going to cover you for basically anything you could possibly want to play around with, and by default it outputs to 4K, but it'll do 1080p and even 720 if for some reason you do want to go down to those resolutions, so it does have that ability. It had a little hitch when I was actually capturing some things. It has been fixed up, but my capture card wanted to report it as 4K 50, not 60, until I switched the resolution, but that does seem to be fixed up in software by now. And you'll see here you have the native image fit as well as stretch. Only a monster would use that, but if you want to, you can be that monster. I really don't mind. If you go over to the controllers tab, you're going to see that we have the 4 controllers here. If they are highlighted as a color, that means they are connected, and you will get an RGB light on the outside of the console. And of course, this thing has full Wi-Fi updating. It connected first time and worked perfectly fine, getting a good connection and speed on my Wi-Fi, so really no notes there. It's one of those things that either works or doesn't work, and you can just basically go from there. As long as you remember your password, you will not have an issue. You can also change up the LED brightness on the M64 as far as the RGB lighting is concerned, and for me this isn't a strike against the console, but I basically just turned it off because I work in a dark studio and the lights are kind of distracting to me. But that is nice. You can basically pick whatever it is you want, and you can do over-the-air software updates. You can also do it from the micro SD card if you don't have an internet connection, but then I'm not sure how you'd actually get the update file in the first place. But updating was quick, it was efficient, and I really didn't have any issues or complaints with it whatsoever, which is really nice to not have to take an SD card out of a piece of hardware, pop it in your computer, drag over an update file, and then go back to the console in and of itself, pop that SD card back in, and then run the update from there. So definitely high marks on that process. Now right now what you're seeing is the colors being ever so slightly off, because the one issue I did face in the captures, and this does happen sometimes with capture card, is my Elgato 4K Pro Mark II internal PCI card had a little bit of an issue with the handshake of actually getting the colors, which is going to be fixed up in just a moment in the next captures. But you will see here, this is the ability you have to change anything as far as the image is concerned in the custom mode, or you can even change around some of the pre-existing modes. Every single thing can be changed, can be articulated, can be set to your heart's content, and honestly, this menu is so deep and so not complicated but comprehensive. You can lose hours in here adjusting the look of what you want your N64 experience to be like, including changing up the scaler and turning on and off a lot of the VI pipeline effects for N64. So my recommendation is just get something you like the look of and start playing the games. Do not pixel peep it too hard, or you may end up spending all of your time that you were going to spend playing video games in this display option, moving things around. But honestly, 10 out of 10 high marks for giving the end user the ability to do whatever the hell they possibly wanted. But this was a tricky review to do because we're going to be moving into the gameplay section now, and that is because the software that was on the ModRetro M64 when it arrived was non-final. I was kind of surprised that they were sending out these review units that still didn't have the final core code, at least for day one. So trust me when I say I really had to think outside the box on this one, wait around a little bit, and make this in stage, which is not my preferred way to do it, but it is the only way I was able to. But if you're into scan lines, if you're into different CRT effects and being able to customize your image, you're not going to be wanting for anything when it comes to the ModRetro M64 suite of options. Now we have to get into the review proper, or what I'm calling the not quite review. That is because, try as I might, I struggled with the M64 basically the entirety of my capture process. I've had issues getting this thing to actually ingest, getting the colorways to be correct as far as the RGB values, and now on the most recent firmware that came out 48 hours before the embargo lifted, my capture card keeps basically overloading the encoder on a 3080 Ti and NVENC encoding, and it gives me some issues on the HDMI signal. So what I really think is going on here is that maybe the pixel clock is overloaded on the HDMI signal, because I will show you some examples of footage coming off my monitors and even television where I don't have that problem, but capturing in on this new firmware, basically it kind of got the colors a little bit closer than what you're seeing here, but also basically gave me an issue where capturing the footage was not working. And I did try with a secondary external capture card as well. I was 0 for 2 on this one, and I understand that sometimes the reviews can be very tricky, and I thought long and hard about how I wanted to present this one. If you are wanting to play the ModRetro M64 on a television, you will be 100% buttoned up as far as getting a good HDMI signal out, as far as getting the appropriate colors, and I will show you that in a moment. But if you're planning on capturing this thing, you might want to wait a little bit longer to make sure that whatever it is you're trying to use for hardware will function in conjunction with the ModRetro M64, because I failed at every single turn to be able to get anything out of this that I really even wanted to show. But because the embargo date is lifted, and of course I review what I find, how I find it, to tell you guys the most pertinent information, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. So as far as the performance of the ModRetro M64 on the new firmware, if you're just staring at my capture monitor but not the actual capture screen where you're ingesting it in, everything looks relatively good. Everything's playing like an N64 should. If you're watching the footage, you're going to see very shortly that I was struggling to be able to even get a capture off this, and that honestly is the first time I have ever encountered a piece of hardware that has presented that to me. And just so you know, as a foundational background, just because I know some people are going to go in the comments and say, but you're doing it wrong, I have an MFA in film productions and cinematography. I have been a studio director of live events dealing with encoding for both streaming as well as ingest. I have been a cinematographer for 22 years and deal in production equipment, capturing images. That is basically how I've made my entire living. So the TLDR on that is I bent over backwards trying to figure out what was going on here, and I could find no solution, because on my capture window, sometimes I would even get vertical lines across the actual screen into the capture device. Now, if you just want to play the ModRetro M64, you are not going to see this on a television, but this is the first piece of hardware I have ever had overload an encoder on a 3080 Ti in NVENC encoding. It's definitely an issue coming out of the HDMI signal, and that's just something I can't really rectify right now on the current software. Now, I will show you captures from the previous software before ModRetro updated it about 48 hours from review, and you will see that I am not overloading the encoder on that one, but I do have some RGB color value issues. But this is one of those things, I have to tell you guys exactly what I find every single time I find it. That way I understand that you have all the pertinent information, and I know this is a software issue, it just needs more updates. But of course I have to, and I always will, review what it is I find, not for the future potential. Yes, this can be fixed. Yes, I'm sure it will be fixed, but currently it is not working for me. Now, right now you'll see that this is the capture from the most recent firmware. Everything looks relatively good. I have this on overclocking mode on insane, and yes, I put it back to standard clocks and even reset the console to make sure that's not why it was overloading, and it was not. But you'll see here suddenly we are dropping frames, and that is because the encoder cannot keep up with what the HDMI signal is sending out. I have never had that happen on this system on any other console, 4K or otherwise. So somewhere in the software this definitely needs to be rectified, but of course the actual review embargo lifts tomorrow, so I can't wait around for that because people are expecting to see my review. That is why I will follow this up in the future. You'll see right here we are capturing off the most recent operating system, the actual thing that I updated just before capturing this, and right here it's going to start stuttering and dropping frames. Or if I go back to the previous firmware I was on, you're going to see that the color is a little bit too vibrant over the HDMI, and that's something that I could not solve for, but I had absolutely no issue with overloading the encoder, and everything played exactly like Wave Race 64 should. So after this soundtrack sample so you can hear the audio quality, we're going to try to converge these two different branching pathways, the capture issue versus the gameplay situation, into one quasi-review for you guys. So go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back.
Ready for the first race. 3, 2, 1, go! Maximum power!
For the most part, it sounds exactly like an N64, but here's where we're going to take these two diverging pathways, the issues that I've had with capture, basically not being able to actually, at least how I would like to do it, finish this review, versus the experience you're going to have if you're sitting on your couch. And I totally get this isn't probably what most people were expecting, but again, I have to tell you guys what it is I find, and I have to do this in the best way I can. If we take a look here before the update on the capture device, unfortunately for some reason, it was just getting color that was not accurate to what I was seeing on my actual production monitor. There's the ModRetro M64. It's running an original cartridge. The color is accurate on the TV, but it is not accurate in my capture. That's why some of these captures are going to look a little bit blown out as far as the colors. If I move over to my LG C4 OLED 65-inch, the color accuracy is exactly what you would expect it to be if you just wanted to sit down and play Super Mario 64. But when I did original captures on Super Mario 64, basically the color saturation was off. And then when I updated the operating system and updated the FPGA code, that is when the HDMI encoder, or basically sending the HDMI signal out of the back, just would not allow me to capture in any effective way. I tried at 4K or 2160p, I tried at 1080p, it would just not ingest whatsoever, and that is kind of where I'm left off here. So basically what I did is I played a lot of the games in the background to kind of talk about what was going on, and if all you want to do is sit down and play N64 games and never try to capture them like you see here, at least on the Elgato 4K Pro Mark II capture card, or even their 1080p external card, also Elgato, that is what you're going to be able to do. Just sit down and play N64 games. But for me personally, this is kind of an asterisk situation because I just don't know how to review this thing. And just for fun, I went over to my Steam machine, loaded up a bullet hell shmup, which usually hits the encoder harder than anything else just because it has to track all the bullets. No, it doesn't seem like it's the most exciting footage, but it is a very effective test on the exact same capture card directly after the ModRetro M64. 100% stability, not a single drop frame. The encoder was basically sitting at like 8% utilization. Now moving over to a test that everyone's going to ask for, we're going to talk about Donkey Kong 64 and whether or not Donkey Kong catches the vine. And just so you know, Donkey Kong 64 also dropped frames when I actually got into the game. And I'm not going to continue to use that footage because it is going to get a little bit irritating. So in the intro here, basically if this is cycle accurate, something we've tested on Analogue 3D, on Mr. FPGA, and now on ModRetro M64, and you can even test on emulators, Donkey Kong should be able to jump off the edge here and grab the vine. I know that's going to be one of the most common questions asked, whether or not he catches it, and clearly Donkey Kong is going to take a big digger right into the water there. And if we move over to Bomberman Hero, one of my favorite N64 games, this is on the previous firmware before capturing became impossible. Everything played exactly as it should, except the colors were definitely off. Now again, if I'm on my television, I just don't encounter that situation. So here's the thing about the ModRetro M64. Normally on the channel, I tell you if it's something I think you're going to enjoy, or something that I don't think you're going to want, whether it's this I'm reviewing or anything else whatsoever. So this is actually getting two different recommendations based upon my time with it right now. If you plan on streaming the ModRetro M64 on Twitter, on Twitch, or anything else, I currently cannot recommend it to anyone out there. Now of course there's a ton of different capture cards on the market, but I tried two different cards from the same manufacturer from two different generations and got the exact same result. And no, I cannot go out and buy another $300 capture card and install it in the back of my PC just to test one system when the capture card and my GPU have absolutely no issues doing anything else on the capture front whatsoever. So I'm just really limited as to what it is I can possibly do because I can't spend $500 just to find out that the problem is actually across all cards and not just this one. But whether or not I recommend the ModRetro M64, I am taking from my workflow and videos a fully wait and see approach, because the software is not final, and even though there was overclocking on this most recent build, I'm not able to actually capture it compared to anything on Analogue 3D, because I can't get it into the timeline without dropping frames. So I can't say whether or not it's running faster or slower, because I have no real way to compare the two. And again, objects and products have growing pains. I'm sure the software will improve. Analogue 3D definitely shipped with some issues as well. Those have all been fixed up, but it's just something for my workflow. I need to be able to give you guys the best information possible, and the ModRetro M64 on its current software basically fought me at every turn to make my life as difficult as hell. I spent too much time on this review. I probably spent 4 or 5 hours going through different iterations of hardware of different computers, Windows 10 versus Windows 11, changing out cables, and anything else I could possibly think of to be able to effectively finalize this review and bring it to you guys. and that's just something that I was not able to do based upon the current software and hardware. But again, if you're not capturing it, a lot of these issues are going to go away. No, Donkey Kong is still not going to grab that vine, but everything else should be relatively stable for you. But when I recommend you buy something, I want to make sure that it's 100% buttoned up, good to go, because when I give something to be my recommendation, I need to be able to stand by that. And right now, this thing is just kind of feeling like it needs a couple more weeks of software development. We'll just have to wait and see what happens there. Hope you guys appreciate the review format here, because trust me, this is not what my plan was. My plan was to capture direct footage from the ModRetro M64, use overclocking mode, compare the two, Analogue 3D versus ModRetro M64 side by side, but I just cannot do that. Hopefully in the next couple weeks or a month, I'm going to be able to update this once those issues are ironed out and basically be able to tell you, yes, it is as fast, yes, it's faster, no, it's slower, or anything else like that. You can definitely leave a comment down below asking for future tests, but right now, until I'm able to get this thing to ingest into my workflow correctly, I'm really not going to be making any more videos on it. But that is my quasi-review of the ModRetro M64. You're either going to love or hate the case design. If you want the best N64 controller ever made, you're going to want ModRetro's M64 controller. Yes, flashcards are going to work. Yes, I had an absolute pain in the ass time trying to capture any of this correctly and was still at the end able to do so. And there's probably a really good product in here. Just need some more time in the development oven. And again, we know what the developer of the FPGA code can do. Robert FPGA Zoom Spas absolutely killed it on Mr. FPGA. Just probably needs a couple more updates, and honestly, the HDMI out signal is nothing to do with the actual FPGA code. That's coming from somebody else, and again, just something that needs to be worked on. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Again, I know it wasn't what you were expecting, but it's the truth of the situation, and that is always what I will tell you guys. But short of that, we're done. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.